Hello, my friend. The world of magic, filled with legends and ancient tales, is opening its gates once again. Tonight, in the Gryffindor dormitory by the crackling fireplace, I will share another story with my friends. Join us, for the magic is about to come alive.
The torches of Hogwarts burned low, their flames wavering in the drafty corridors, like tired sentinels keeping watch over the sleeping castle. The great clock in the tower had just struck midnight when Albus Dumbledore, still a young man with auburn hair and a sharp, thoughtful gaze, walked the quiet halls with his wand raised for light. He had been restless all week, troubled by things that would not let him sleep, whispers in the walls, books that rearranged themselves overnight, and a peculiar humming that only he seemed able to hear when the castle fell silent. That evening, Professor McGonagall, not yet the stern but beloved deputy headmistress she would become, had come to his office with a frown. "Another one, Albus," she said. A portrait changed frames during supper. The fat friar swears he saw it slide right off the wall and float away by itself. Dumbledore, instead of being alarmed, had leaned back in his chair, eyes distant. "The castle is shifting again. It hasn't done that since when?" she asked. He had only smiled and said, "Since before our time, Minerva, since the Founder's time." Now he walked alone, following that faint hum that trembled through the floor stones beneath his feet. It was not a tune, not exactly a vibration, more felt than heard, deep and ancient. It seemed to lead him toward the heart of the castle, below the great hall, beyond where even the caretaker dared to tread. He turned down a narrow passageway known to few, one that had appeared on no map, even the enchanted Marauder's map that the students would one day use. His wand light fell upon carvings in the stone, symbols intertwined, circles crossing one another, 4 in total, faintly glowing gold and silver. He knelt, brushing dust from them. One symbol showed a lion, another a badger, then a raven, and finally a serpent, all coiling around a single rune at the center. The hum grew louder. He whispered softly, "Revelio." At once the carvings blazed to life. The rune at the center glimmered and turned like a key, and a seam appeared in the wall, an outline of a doorway that hadn't been there before. Dumbledore hesitated only a moment before pressing his palm against the rune. The stones shifted with a deep rumble, opening to reveal a staircase descending into shadow. He could smell the age of it, the dry scent of untouched air like parchment sealed for centuries. A chill rolled up from below, and with it came a voice, faint and cold as mist. "Return, heir of none. The path is closed to the unbound." Dumbledore froze. "Who speaks?" There was silence, then only the echo of his own breath. He knew ghostly voices well enough. This was not one of them. It was older, rooted in the very stones of the castle itself. He took a step down, then another. The humming grew stronger, pulsing like a heartbeat. The stair twisted and turned, leading to a circular chamber whose walls gleamed faintly with embedded runes. In the center stood a pedestal of marble upon which rested a small open book, its pages blank, yet shining faintly as though they held words too shy to be read. Dumbledore approached, heart quickening. He had studied every known magical artifact of Hogwarts, the Sorting Hat, the Sword of Gryffindor, even the enchanted hourglasses of the houses. But this was unknown. He reached out and the pages began to fill. Lines of golden ink appeared, forming words in a hand both ancient and elegant. to the keeper of the light. The unity of four shall guard what none may claim alone. Beware the severed one whose pride will wake the sleeping spell. The writing faded, and a gust of air swept through the chamber, as though the castle itself exhaled. The humming ceased. The silence that followed was deep and uneasy. He closed the book gently, his mind racing. The unity of four. The founders. Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw, and Slytherin. What had they guarded here, and who was the severed one? When he turned to leave, the stair behind him had sealed. The wall was smooth and unbroken. "Ah," he murmured, faintly amused, despite the danger. Of course. He lifted his wand. Aperio. The wall trembled but did not move. He tried again, stronger. Reducto. But the stones absorbed the blast without a scratch. Then the chamber began to whisper. It was not a single voice this time, but many, layered, murmuring, as though all four founders were speaking at once. The words were too tangled to understand, but one name echoed clear through the noise. Slytherin. Dumbledore stiffened. "Salazar?" he whispered. The whisper grew into a hiss. A shadow rippled across the wall, forming the shape of a serpent's head that turned toward him, its eyes gleaming with spectral green fire. "You should not have come," it said. Before he could respond, the chamber floor quaked, and the pedestal sank out of sight. The serpent shadow lunged, dissolving into black mist that struck Dumbledore squarely in the chest. He stumbled back, gasping, his wand light flaring wildly as he fought the sudden surge of cold that filled his lungs. Then, as quickly as it had come, the darkness vanished. The hum was gone. The wall behind him opened, the stair returned, and the chamber was once more silent and still. When Dumbledore emerged back into the familiar corridors of Hogwarts, dawn was already creeping through the high windows. He leaned against the wall, breathing hard, the faint echo of the voice still coiled in his mind. "Slytherin," he murmured again. Somewhere deep within the castle, beyond all known rooms and maps, something stirred in reply. And in the great hall, as the morning sun touched the house banners, a single shimmer ran across the green silk of Slytherin's flag, like the flicker of eyes waking from a long, uneasy sleep. Morning light washed over the spires of Hogwarts, casting long shadows across the courtyard and glinting on the windows of the great hall. The castle, ever alive in its own strange way, seemed unsettled that day. Staircases halted mid-turn, paintings whispered among themselves, and the suits of armor along the corridors creaked uneasily, as if sensing an invisible change in the air. Professor Dumbledore sat at the staff table, hands clasped before him, though the untouched plate of eggs and toast before him had grown cold. His eyes, usually bright with curiosity or mischief, were now narrowed in thought. The night's encounter echoed through his mind, the hum, the whisper, the serpent of shadow, and that name, Slytherin. He turned slightly as the headmaster, Armando Dippet, leaned toward him. "You seem troubled, Albus," said Dippet, his voice kind but weary. "Up late again?" "Perhaps a little," Dumbledore replied with a faint smile. "The castle has been behaving unpredictably. Have you noticed it?" Dippet gave a rueful chuckle. "My dear boy, Hogwarts has been unpredictable for nearly 1,000 years. I've learned not to ask why." But Dumbledore was not so easily comforted. As breakfast ended and students hurried off to their lessons, he rose and made his way toward the library. He needed answers. Real ones. The library's scent of parchment and candle wax was soothing, But today, even that familiar fragrance could not quiet his mind. He moved swiftly through the aisles until he reached the restricted section. Madam Pince, ever watchful, hesitated only a moment before nodding him through. He opened book after book, histories, journals, even the HOGWARTS. A history of a much older edition, but the deeper he searched, the more questions grew. Every record of the founders ended the same way. After the castle's creation, they drifted apart, and Salazar Slytherin left in anger. Yet the details were vague, the arguments half-told, and there was no mention of a vault or any secret magic of the founders. Hours passed. The sun began to sink when Dumbledore found something different. A brittle scroll bound in black ribbon tucked behind a row of forgotten tomes. The wax seal bore 4 symbols interwoven, the same markings he had seen in the hidden chamber. He unrolled it carefully. The script was spidery, the ink faded to brown. To whomsoever reads these words, know that the founder's legacy lies hidden, bound by our fourfold enchantment. Only by the virtues of courage, loyalty, wisdom, and cunning combined may the path be opened. Let none seek to claim alone what was made by all, lest the severed one rise again. The scroll ended abruptly, its lower edge torn. Dumbledore whispered to himself, the severed one. Slytherin. That night he summoned Professor McGonagall to his office. She entered, expression crisp as ever, though her eyes softened at his tone. You've found something, haven't you? She said. He nodded. Something that should not exist. I believe the castle holds a vault, a place sealed by the founders themselves. She frowned. You think this is what's causing the disturbances? I'm certain of it. And if Slytherin's spirit still lingers in some form? McGonagall's mouth tightened. We have children in this castle, Albus. I know. He looked at her gravely. That is why we must find it before whatever lies beneath finds them. The next morning, before classes began, Dumbledore set out with her to investigate. They followed his memory of the passageway, down past the kitchens behind a tapestry of a laughing troll, through a sloping corridor that smelled faintly of damp stone. The rune-marked wall awaited them, faintly glowing once more. McGonagall touched it cautiously. It's warm, she murmured. Dumbledore lifted his wand. Alohomora. The symbols flickered but did not yield. Instead, faint letters shimmered across the stone. United or undone? He smiled slightly. Of course, the castle itself insists on unity. We'll need 4 to open it. 4 what? 4 who? He said. Representing each house. That was the founder's intent. Later that evening, he gathered 3 students in secret, 1 from each of the other houses. Godfrey Thorne of Gryffindor, Helena March of Hufflepuff, and Edmund Quill of Ravenclaw. They followed Dumbledore through torchlit corridors until they reached the sealed wall. The students looked uneasy but trusted their professor implicitly. Place your hands on the symbols of your houses, he instructed, and think of what your founder valued most. They obeyed. Godfrey placed his hand on the lion and whispered, bravery. Helena on the badger said softly, loyalty. Edmund on the raven murmured, wisdom. Dumbledore placed his own on the serpent. Cunning, he said quietly. Used rightly, it is not so different from wisdom. The wall pulsed beneath their hands. Light burst from the runes, swirling into a spiral that drew them forward. The stone dissolved into air, revealing the staircase descending once again into darkness. The students gasped. Dumbledore's voice was calm but firm. Whatever you see, do not stray from me. The castle remembers its builders, and it may test us as it did them. They descended slowly. The air grew colder, the shadows thicker. At last they emerged into a vast chamber. Unlike the one Dumbledore had entered alone, this one was brighter, its walls covered with mosaics depicting the four founders, their wands raised together. At the center stood 4 doorways, each marked with a sigil. Above them, words shimmered in golden script. 4 trials for the 4. None may pass who does not know their heart. Godfrey took an eager step forward. Trials? Like a test? It appears so, said Dumbledore quietly, and perhaps one we cannot refuse. The doors flared with light. A gust of magic rushed through the chamber, and in an instant they were scattered, each drawn into a different doorway. Professor! McGonagall's voice echoed faintly before the walls sealed with a thunderous crack. Dumbledore found himself alone. The room around him was circular and dim, lit by torches that flared blue. The air smelled of parchment and dust, and at its center stood a great mirror framed in carved serpents. His reflection stared back, but behind it shimmered shapes, illusions of people he knew, colleagues and students, watching silently. A voice whispered from the shadows, "Cunning is not deceit, but knowing when to bend and when to stand. Show that you understand or be bound by your own reflection." The mirror brightened. His reflection stepped forward, alive, smirking faintly. "So, Albus," it said, "you seek the power of the founders? Tell me, would you use it for the school or for yourself?" Dumbledore's hand tightened on his wand. "For neither," he said. "For balance." The reflection tilted its head. "Then prove it." All at once the mirror's surface rippled like water, and shadowy figures poured forth, phantoms of his own making, regrets, ambitions, fears. They circled him, whispering of power, glory, and the wisdom to rule. He felt the pull of it, the seductive promise of knowledge beyond measure. But Dumbledore raised his wand and said softly, "I have seen what power without restraint becomes. I will not follow that path." The phantoms froze, their whispers fading. The mirror blazed once, then shattered into light. The voice spoke again, calm and approving. "You have chosen well." The chamber doors creaked open, and Dumbledore stepped out into the central hall once more, heart pounding. Only one of the 4 doors now glowed faintly. The others remained sealed, their trials unfinished. He waited, the silence pressing on him. Then faintly, from behind one of the doors, he heard a scream. It was McGonagall's voice. Without hesitation, Dumbledore ran toward it, wand drawn, unaware that far below the chamber floor, a shadow was stirring again, its hiss echoing faintly through the stone. Soon, the sound of McGonagall's scream tore through the chamber, echoing off the stone with terrible clarity. Dumbledore sprinted toward the sealed doorway from which it came, his wand cutting a streak of light through the darkness. The door bore the sigil of the Badger, Helga Hufflepuff's emblem, and pulsed faintly as if alive. He raised his wand. Finite. The runes only flared, brighter. He tried again, this time with a muttered Alohomora, but the door resisted still. Only when he laid his hand against the stone and whispered, "By loyalty's bond, I enter not to conquer, but to aid," did the barrier shudder and yield, dissolving into golden dust. The air inside the room was thick with warmth and light. The chamber resembled a vast garden beneath the earth, trees glowing softly, vines trailing from the ceiling, and a stream murmuring along the edge. It was beautiful, serene, yet threaded with danger. Dumbledore could feel it at once, the deceptive calm before something unseen moved in the dark. "Minerva?" he called. Her voice came faintly from beyond a curtain of vines. "Here, Oh, thank Merlin, Albus." He pushed through and found her standing on a narrow stone path that stretched over a pool of glassy water. At its center stood a pedestal upon which rested a golden chalice engraved with the symbol of a heart entwined by ivy. "I tried to reach it," she said breathlessly, "but the stones move. The moment I step forward, they vanish." Indeed, when she pointed her wand at one of the stones ahead, it flickered and disappeared, leaving a patch of still water. Dumbledore peered into the pool and gasped. Beneath the surface floated not reflections, but faces, dozens of them students, teachers, even ghosts, staring up with wide, unblinking eyes. "An illusion," he murmured. "Or perhaps a test?" He extended his hand. "We must cross together." Helga Hufflepuff valued loyalty above all things. No one passes alone. McGonagall hesitated, then nodded, gripping his hand. Together they stepped forward. The first stone held firm beneath their weight. The second trembled but did not vanish. The third wavered and McGonagall stumbled, but Dumbledore caught her arm before she fell. At once the path brightened, solidifying beneath their feet. "She was a clever one," he said with a small smile. "Helga always hid her wisdom in kindness." When they reached the center, the chalice glowed brighter and a voice filled the air, warm, kind, but commanding. "Loyalty binds and loyalty redeems. Will you place your trust not in spell or shield, but in another heart?" Dumbledore looked at McGonagall. "I will." Without hesitation, she echoed, "As will I." The chalice lifted into the air, spilling a single drop of golden liquid into the pool. The water shimmered and cleared, and the faces below faded into nothingness. The chalice vanished, replaced by a symbol of light that etched itself into the chamber wall. The door behind them opened silently. The test was complete. Back in the main hall, Dumbledore saw that one more of the 4 sigils now burned with steady light. 2 remained, Ravenclaws and Gryffindors. Moments later, Edmund Quill emerged from the Ravenmark door, his robes torn and eyes wide. "Professor," he gasped, "I saw illusions, questions without answers, riddles that turned upon themselves, but I solved it." The voice said, "Wisdom isn't knowledge. It's knowing when to listen." Dumbledore smiled, pride flashing briefly in his eyes. "You've done well, Edmund. Rest now. You've earned it." That left only one chamber unopened. The door of the Lion. But as they turned toward it, Godfrey Thorne was nowhere to be seen. "Perhaps his trial still continues," said McGonagall quietly. Dumbledore frowned. The sigil flickered, its glow erratic. "Or perhaps it's gone wrong." He raised his wand again, but before he could act, the door burst open on its own. A rush of red light and heat poured forth, and Godfrey stumbled out, coughing, his face pale with terror. Behind him came a roar, not of man or beast, but of pure magic, wild and untamed. The chamber beyond was burning, flames licking across the floor, devouring the mosaics on the walls. Dumbledore thrust his wand forward. "Aguamenti!" A surge of water shot forth, colliding with the flames. But even as they hissed and died, something darker stirred within the smoke. A shape, a coil, the whisper of a serpent's breath. "Slytherin," he whispered. Then, clear as a voice carried by the wind, came words that chilled them all. "You cannot keep me buried forever, Albus Dumbledore. The Founder's unity was a dream, but power power is eternal. The chamber walls trembled, the sigils flickered, and then, with a thunderous crack, a fissure split the floor of the great hall beneath them. Dumbledore grabbed McGonagall's arm. "Get the students out!" "But now!" he shouted. She obeyed, guiding the frightened students up the stairs as Dumbledore turned back to face the chasm. From its depths rose a plume of dark mist, twisting into the shape of a colossal serpent whose eyes glowed the same green as those he'd seen that first night. The creature spoke again, its voice both within and beyond hearing. "Long have I waited. The vault opens, and with it, the truth of what the Founders hid from you all." Dumbledore stood his ground, wand raised. "You are but a shadow, Salazar. Whatever you were, you have no place in this age." The serpent laughed, a low, rumbling sound that shook dust from the ceiling. "A shadow, yes, but even a shadow may strike." It lunged. Dumbledore shouted, "Protego Maxima!" The spell blazed around him, a dome of silver light. The serpent crashed against it, hissing in fury, its form breaking apart into a cloud of black smoke. Yet the smoke did not vanish. It seeped through the cracks in the stones, flowing downward deeper into the castle's roots. The sigils on the wall flickered once, then went dark. McGonagall returned, pale but unharmed. "The students are safe," she said. "But what was that, Albus?" He lowered his wand slowly. "The severed one," he said. "Slytherin's spirit, or what remains of it. The Founders sealed it within the vault, but the enchantment is failing. We've awoken it." The words hung heavy between them. "Then we must seal it again," said McGonagall. Dumbledore nodded grimly. "Yes, but to do so, we must finish what the Founders began. We must find the heart of their magic, the unity that bound them. Only then can we close the vault forever." He looked toward the darkness below where the mist had vanished. "And if we fail," he added quietly, "Hogwarts itself may not survive what wakes beneath it." Outside, the night had fallen again, and thunder rolled above the castle. The banners in the great hall stirred in an unseen wind, and deep beneath the stones, something ancient whispered, half laughter, half warning, as if the very soul of the school trembled in its sleep. Storm clouds gathered above the castle that night, black and low, veined with lightning that flashed against the turrets like silver claws. The wind howled through the battlements, carrying a faint hiss that made the portraits shiver, and the ghosts retreat into the walls. Even Peeves, the mischievous poltergeist, vanished from sight, muttering about bad magic waking in the stones. Dumbledore stood in the astronomy tower, his robes whipping around him. The storm had been building since the vault's disturbance, growing fiercer with each passing hour. He suspected it was no natural tempest. The castle was reacting, its ancient enchantments straining, its protective wards trembling. The awakening of Slytherin's shadow had stirred Hogwarts itself. Professor McGonagall joined him, her expression tight. The corridors are shifting again. The staircases move without pattern, and half the portraits refuse to speak. The ghosts say they feel pain. Dumbledore nodded grimly. "The castle is alive, Minerva, though not as we understand life. Its magic flows from the unity of its Founders. When that balance weakens, Hogwarts suffers." "Then we must restore it," she said firmly. "Yes," he murmured, "but to do that we must find where the Founders' enchantment lies strongest, what they called the heart of the castle." He turned to face her. "And that, I fear, is where the severed one now hides." Lightning flared, illuminating the valley below. For a moment, Dumbledore thought he saw something move at the edge of the forbidden forest. A long, dark ripple that vanished into the trees. By dawn, the storm had not broken. Dumbledore and McGonagall descended to the Great Hall to find the faculty waiting. The enchanted ceiling reflected the churning sky above, and the students' chatter was subdued. Even the ghosts drifted about restlessly. Headmaster Dippet rose, his lined face drawn with worry. "Albus, what in Merlin's name is happening to my school?" Dumbledore spoke calmly but clearly, concealing the weight pressing on his chest. "An old enchantment has been disturbed, one tied to the founders themselves. If left unchecked, it could unravel the very wards that protect Hogwarts." Murmurs rippled through the hall. Professor Slughorn looked up from his tea, alarmed. "Unravel the wards? That's impossible. Surely even you don't mean—" But the tremor that shook the floor at that moment silenced him. Plates rattled, the enchanted ceiling flickered, showing flashes of the real sky beyond. Black clouds boiling over the towers. Dumbledore's voice carried above the noise. "Everyone remain calm. Prefects, lead your houses to the dormitories. Do not stray. Professors, with me." Within the hour, the younger students were safely hidden behind warded doors, and the staff gathered once more in the entrance hall. Dumbledore traced his wand through the air, summoning a map of the castle formed from golden light. At its center pulsed a deep, dark shadow like ink spreading through water. "There," he said, "beneath the old foundations. The magic is pooling there." McGonagall peered closer. "That's near the dungeons, isn't it?" "Yes," said Dumbledore. "Nearer still, to the Chamber of Secrets." A tense silence followed. Every witch and wizard present had heard the legend that Salazar Slytherin had left behind a hidden chamber to house a monster. But Dumbledore knew now that the chamber was but one part of a greater design. The vault of the Founders was deeper still. "I will go down," he said at last. McGonagall shook her head sharply. "Not alone." He met her gaze. "It is me the magic calls to, Minerva. The serpent spoke my name." "And that is precisely why you should not go alone," she countered. "If Slytherin's spirit seeks you, you'll need someone to pull you back should he try to—" A sudden bang interrupted her. The doors to the hall burst open and a student stumbled in, pale, trembling, his Slytherin robes torn. "Professor, please, you must come," he cried. "Something's in the lower corridors. The stones, they're moving." Dumbledore was beside him in an instant. "Who is down there?" The boy shook his head, eyes wide. "No one, sir. Not anymore. They were swallowed by the floor." McGonagall went white. "Show me," said Dumbledore, his tone calm but iron hard. They followed the boy through twisting corridors where the walls seemed to breathe. The torches burned with a strange green flame, casting eerie reflections on the stone. When they reached the lowest passage, the air turned cold and heavy. The student stopped short. "Here, sir." It was here. The floor ahead had cracked open, revealing a narrow stair spiraling downward. Dark vapors seeped from it like smoke. Dumbledore turned to McGonagall. "Go back, seal the upper halls. If I do not return—" "You will," she interrupted, her voice shaking only slightly. "I'll keep them safe." He nodded once, then descended alone. The stair seemed endless. Each step took him deeper into a silence so complete it pressed on his ears. The walls glistened faintly, runes shifting like living things. Once he thought he heard whispering, but it faded before he could catch the words. Finally, he reached a vast cavern. It was unlike the chambers before, a cathedral of stone and shadow. The floor was carved into a great circle. At its center, an altar of black marble. Around it, 4 statues loomed: Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw, and Slytherin, each facing inward, wands raised toward a point above the altar. Suspended there was a sphere of pale light, flickering weakly. Dumbledore felt it at once. The source, the heart of the castle. But something else was there too. A presence. From behind the statue of Slytherin, the mist gathered, rising and twisting until it took form. A tall figure emerged, robed and hooded, its face half hidden in shadow. Yet Dumbledore saw the glint of ancient cunning in its eyes. "You return to what is not yours," the shade said softly. "This power belongs to the Founders, and to me most of all." "Slytherin," Dumbledore said, his voice steady. The figure's smile was thin and cruel. "What remains of him, yes. The others bound me here, fearing what I had learned. They called it unity. I called it weakness." Dumbledore raised his wand. "You endangered everything they built. They were right to stop you." The spirit laughed, a hollow, echoing sound. "And yet here you stand, seeking what they hid. You crave the same knowledge, Dumbledore. You feel it calling to you even now." For a moment the words seemed to ring true. The light pulsed, and with it came a rush of power, warm, ancient, intoxicating. He could feel the pulse of the castle, the weight of its centuries, the secrets buried in every stone. He forced the temptation down. "I seek balance, not dominion." "Balance?" hissed the shadow. "Then you will fail, as they did. There is no balance in magic, only the strong and the forgotten." It raised a hand and the statues groaned, cracks running through their stone faces. The sphere of light dimmed. The ground shook. Dumbledore thrust out his wand. "Lumos Maxima." The cavern blazed white, forcing the shadow back. The light burned against it, but the shade only laughed, its form rippling like smoke. "You cannot destroy me," it whispered. "I am bound to this place. As long as Hogwarts stands, so too shall I." "Then I shall bind you again," Dumbledore said, and his wand flared with blue fire. The duel that followed was unlike any he had ever fought. Spells collided in thunderclaps of color, searing across the cavern. Runes ignited, walls cracked, the statues groaned as if alive. The serpent of shadow lunged again and again, each strike a surge of ancient rage. But Dumbledore was not only powerful, he was wise. He did not fight to win. He fought to hold, to restrain, to endure. Slowly, inch by inch, he forced the shadow back toward the altar. With a final cry, he cast the binding charm that drew upon the 4 virtues of the Founders. "Cor unum," he shouted, "one heart." The statues flared with light, red, yellow, blue, and green. The colors twined together, forming a brilliant golden chain that wrapped around the shadow, pulling it inward. It shrieked as it was drawn into the sphere of light. The heart pulsed once, then steadied, glowing strong and pure. Silence fell. Dumbledore sank to one knee, exhausted. The mist was gone. The cavern was calm once more. The Founders' statues stood whole again, their expressions serene. He whispered into the stillness, "Rest now, Hogwarts. Rest." Far above, the storm broke. Rain fell in torrents, washing over the towers. The castle sighed, a deep, contented sound, as if relieved. But as Dumbledore turned to leave, a faint voice drifted through the chamber, soft and warning. "This binding will not hold forever. The shadow waits, and time is its ally. He paused, eyes narrowing. Then he whispered back, "Then let time find me ready." And with that, he climbed the long stair toward the light of dawn, unaware that in the highest tower, the sorting hat trembled slightly, its ancient magic stirring, as if remembering a song half forgotten and not yet done. The morning that followed was still and silver, as though the storm had swept the world clean. The valley around Hogwarts glistened with rain, and mist coiled along the edges of the lake. Yet beneath that fragile calm, the castle seemed changed. The air was heavier, the silence deeper. The professors whispered of strange flickers in the corridors, of portraits that stared too long, and of dreams filled with serpents and light. Albus Dumbledore walked alone through the courtyard, his wand clasped loosely in one hand. He had slept little, the memory of the duel still pulsed behind his eyes. The echo of Slytherin's laughter, thin and mocking, haunted him more than the battle itself. For all his strength, he knew he had not destroyed the spirit, only bound it again. He stopped beside the ancient fountain at the courtyard's center. Its waters, once bright, now shimmered with faint threads of green. He touched the rim, gently feeling the hum of magic. Hogwarts was healing, but slowly. A voice spoke behind him. "The students say the castle feels awake." He turned to find McGonagall approaching, her hair pinned back and her robes immaculate, though her eyes betrayed fatigue. "In a way it is," he said quietly. "The heart has been restored, but not all that stirs within these walls is good." She hesitated. "And the shadow? You truly believe it was Slytherin?" "I believe it was what remains of him," Dumbledore replied. "A shard of will, trapped in the enchantments that built this place. His mind may have faded, but his purpose lingers. Twisted, hungry." She frowned, glancing toward the dark windows of the dungeons. "And you're certain the seal will hold?" He did not answer immediately. Instead, he looked up at the spires, where sunlight began to burn through the mist. "For now," he said at last, "but the Founder's magic was never meant to be eternal. Every binding weakens, given time." They walked together toward the great hall. Breakfast had just begun, and the chatter of students was a comfort, proof that for the moment Hogwarts still breathed. The house banners swayed gently above their heads, and for the first time in days, laughter filled the air. Yet as Dumbledore took his seat at the staff table, a strange chill brushed his spine. He looked toward the far end of the hall. The green banner of Slytherin fluttered. Then for an instant its serpent emblem seemed to shift, coiling tighter, its eyes glinting a deeper shade of emerald. No one else appeared to notice. By midday, he had retreated to his office, seeking solitude. Fawkes, the young phoenix perched upon his stand, trilled softly as Dumbledore entered. The bird's feathers gleamed with gold and scarlet light, and its eyes followed him with gentle intelligence. "Ah, my friend," Dumbledore murmured, stroking the phoenix's neck. "Even your song cannot quite drive away the feeling that something unfinished stirs." Fawkes tilted his head as if understanding, and released a single note that shimmered like sunlight through glass. Dumbledore smiled faintly, then turned to the shelves behind his desk. He retrieved the small, ancient book he had found in the hidden vault, the one that had written its message in golden ink. Its pages were blank again, save for a single line that had appeared during the night. "The unity of four must be renewed, else division shall awake the sleeping fire." He traced the words with a fingertip, frowning. "Renewed?" he whispered. Before he could ponder further, there was a knock at the door. It opened to reveal Edmund Quill, the Ravenclaw student who had passed the trial of wisdom. The boy looked nervous but resolute. "Professor," he said, clutching a folded parchment, "I think you should see this." Dumbledore gestured him forward. "What is it?" Edmund unfolded the parchment, a page torn from an old volume. "I found it in the library's restricted section. It's signed by Rowena Ravenclaw herself, or someone using her seal." Dumbledore took the page and read aloud. "Should the vault be disturbed and the shadow rise again, seek the mirror of union. Within it lies the reflection of all houses as one. Only through that mirror may the heart be bound anew." He looked up sharply. "The mirror of union? I have never heard of it." "It's not in any record I could find," Edmund said quickly. "But there's a note in the margin. Something about Ravenclaw's tower." Dumbledore's eyes gleamed. "Then that is where we shall begin." Together they ascended the long, spiraling stairs to the tower. The climb was steep, and the air grew cooler the higher they went. The Ravenclaw common room awaited them, circular, serene, filled with light from tall, arched windows. The bronze eagle knocker greeted them with its usual riddle. "What cannot be seen, yet binds all that lives." Edmund smiled faintly. "Trust," he answered. The door swung open. Inside, the fire burned low, casting soft shadows across the bookshelves and star charts. Dumbledore moved slowly, sensing for any trace of hidden enchantment. His wand tip glowed blue as he whispered, "Revelio." For a moment, nothing happened. Then a shimmer rippled across the far wall, revealing a concealed archway. "The mirror of union," Dumbledore breathed. The archway opened into a small, circular chamber, lined with marble. At its center stood a tall mirror framed in intertwined metal, gold, silver, bronze, and green steel, all merging seamlessly. The glass itself gleamed softly, and within its depths Dumbledore saw not his own reflection but the faint outlines of 4 figures, each robed in the colors of the houses. He stepped closer. The figures turned their heads toward him as though aware of his presence. Their faces were indistinct, but the aura of power that radiated from them was unmistakable. Then, without warning, the mirror pulsed with light, and a voice, neither male nor female, but a chorus of many, filled the air. "The bond is frayed. The heart weakens. Renew the vow, or darkness will claim what we built." Edmund stumbled back, eyes wide. "Professor, what does it mean?" Dumbledore's gaze remained fixed on the mirror. "The founders bound their unity with an oath, a living enchantment woven into the castle's heart. It appears the bond must be reaffirmed, and soon." Before he could say more, the light dimmed, and a crack spidered across the mirror's surface. A faint hiss echoed through the chamber. The air turned cold. From the crack seeped black vapor, coiling into serpentine shapes. Dumbledore raised his wand instinctively. "Back, Edmund!" The mist gathered, forming once more the faint outline of a man's face. Sharp, proud, and unmistakably Slytherin's. "Did you think your victory complete?" It hissed. "You have touched the heart, but it still beats for me. When the bond fails, Hogwarts shall fall, and I shall rise anew." The mirror trembled. Dumbledore stepped forward, voice ringing with command. "You misunderstand your own legacy, Salazar. The strength of Hogwarts was never yours alone." The shadow sneered. "Then prove it. Renew your precious unity if you can." But remember, without division there is no choice. Without choice there is no will, and will is power. The mirror flared once more, and the shadow vanished, leaving the glass cracked and dark. For a long moment the two stood in silence. The air smelled faintly of lightning. At last, Dumbledore spoke. He means to break the bond before we can restore it. The Founder's enchantment must be renewed by 4 representatives, 1 for each house, and they must act together as their creators once did. Edmund swallowed. And if they fail? Dumbledore's expression was grave. Then the shadow will claim the heart, and the magic of Hogwarts itself will turn against us. Outside thunder rumbled once more, rolling through the high towers like a warning. The mist that had cleared from the lake began to rise again, swirling into faint shapes that moved like serpents beneath the dawn. And far below, in the depths of the castle, the faint hum returned. The same hum Dumbledore had heard that first night, slow, rhythmic, and growing stronger with every heartbeat. The following days passed under a pall of unease. Though the skies above Hogwarts shone clear, the air within its walls felt heavy, charged with the weight of ancient magic stirring from long sleep. Whispers ran among the students, of voices in the corridors, of staircases leading to rooms that no longer existed, of green light flashing beneath the floors at night. Dumbledore spent his waking hours searching the archives, poring through manuscripts so old their ink had faded to dust. He sought any clue that might explain how the Founder's vow had been woven, and more importantly, how it could be renewed. But the texts gave little, only scattered fragments, each bearing the same refrain: 4 hearts, 1 purpose. Only thus may the castle stand. Meanwhile, the strange hum continued to pulse faintly through the stone, sometimes slow as a heartbeat, sometimes sharp as a breath drawn in anger. It came from below, always below. Dumbledore knew what waited there: the vault, the heart, and the shadow, bound within. Yet it was not the shadow that troubled him most. It was the castle itself. The magic that had once obeyed its masters now seemed restless, uncertain whom it should serve. Late one evening, when the halls were quiet and only the ghosts drifted through the dark, Dumbledore stood again before the cracked mirror of union. The reflection within no longer showed the 4 Founders, but rather his own weary face and the faint shimmer of figures behind him, blurry, indistinct. He whispered, "Show me what must be done." The mirror quivered, and for a moment the chamber filled with faint light. Shapes formed within the glass, 4 silhouettes, standing in a circle. Then words appeared across the surface in runes of gold. 4 shall renew what 4 began. Each must bear the mark of their house and speak the truth of their Founder's heart. The writing faded. Dumbledore straightened slowly, a spark of purpose kindling in his eyes. He would need 4 champions, students like those who had helped him open the vault, 1 from each house, pure in intent and strong in spirit. They must represent the courage of Gryffindor, the loyalty of Hufflepuff, the wisdom of Ravenclaw, and the cunning, yes, even the cunning of Slytherin, for only together could the bond be restored. By morning he had chosen. From Gryffindor, Godfrey Thorne, the brave-hearted boy who had faced the trial of flame. From Hufflepuff, Helena March, steadfast and true. From Ravenclaw, Edmund Quill, the clever thinker whose curiosity had uncovered the mirror. And from Slytherin, the quiet, sharp-eyed girl Eveline Rogier, who had once defended a younger student from her own house's mockery, a girl whose ambition was tempered by compassion. He gathered them in his office at dusk. The firelight flickered across their faces, each uncertain yet resolute. Fawkes watched from his perch, feathers gleaming faintly gold. Dumbledore spoke quietly. "What I ask of you will not be easy. The founders created this school as a bond between 4 hearts and 4 ideals, but that bond is weakening. Unless it is renewed, Hogwarts itself may fall." Godfrey frowned. "Fall, sir? How can a castle fall?" "Not with stone or flame," Dumbledore said, "but from within. Its magic will tear itself apart. Already you can feel it, the shifting corridors, the restless ghosts. These are warnings." Helena's voice trembled slightly. "And the shadow we saw? That was real?" "Real enough," he said. "The echo of Salazar Slytherin's will, bound deep in the vault. He seeks to break the unity of the Founder's enchantment. If he succeeds, he will reclaim the heart, and all that Hogwarts stands for will be lost." The 4 exchanged uneasy glances. Then Edmund straightened. "Tell us what we must do." Dumbledore inclined his head. "You must journey into the vault once more. Each of you will face the trial of your house's virtue, but this time you will not face them alone. The magic demands unity. You must complete them together." Eveline's green eyes flickered with determination. "And if we fail?" He looked at her, and for a moment the firelight caught the weariness in his gaze. "Then the shadow will wake fully, and no spell I know will bind it again." That night they descended through the secret passage hidden behind the tapestry of the Laughing Troll. The air grew cold and damp as they followed Dumbledore's wand light down into the depths. When they reached the vast chamber once more, the 4 great statues awaited them, silent and watchful. The heart of the castle still floated above the altar, glowing faintly. The air thrummed with power, older than time, vast and waiting. Dumbledore turned to the students. "The Founders' trials remain, but they have changed. The enchantment now tests not the virtues of individuals, but of all together. Stand as one, and you will prevail. Stand divided." He did not finish the thought. He raised his wand and murmured an incantation. The sigils on the floor flared, red, yellow, blue, and green, merging into a single circle of white light. The chamber shuddered. The statue's eyes opened. From each, a beam of magic shot outward, striking the center of the circle. Light erupted, and suddenly the floor beneath the students vanished. They fell, yet not into darkness. They landed in a forest bathed in twilight. Trees of silver leaves surrounded them, their trunks marked with runes. The air smelled of wood smoke and rain. "This isn't real," Edmund murmured. "An illusion, one woven by the Founder's enchantments." Dumbledore's voice echoed faintly, distant but clear. "The first trial, the trial of unity. Only by trusting one another may you find the path." No sooner had he spoken than the forest shifted. Paths appeared and vanished, branches twisted into new shapes, and faint whispers danced through the air, taunting, misleading. Helena pointed to a glimmering trail of light. "That way." Godfrey started forward, but Eveline caught his arm. "Too easy," she said. "Slytherin's trickery hides in what looks simplest." Edmund crouched, tracing the runes on a nearby root. "Look here. These markings form a pattern. Each direction represents a virtue. Courage, loyalty, wisdom, cunning. The correct path must use them all." Helena smiled faintly. "Then we go together, each choose one, and will follow where the 4 meet." They spread out, calling to one another as they searched the forest floor. The whispers grew louder, tempting them with visions of glory, of safety, of solitude, but each resisted, leaning on the others when doubt crept in. At last, the four paths converged upon a single clearing where a pool of silver water lay still as glass. In its depths shimmered their reflections, not separate, but joined into one form, four faces overlapping, four hearts beating in unison. The forest fell silent. Then, from the air above the pool, a voice spoke. Not the hiss of Slytherin, but a chorus, warm and proud. Thus it began, and thus it shall endure. For, as one, light enveloped them. When it faded, they stood once more in the great vault. The circle of light beneath their feet burned brighter, steady and whole. The heart above the altar pulsed strongly, its glow deep and pure. Dumbledore stood at the edge of the platform, his eyes bright. "You have done it," he said softly. "The unity is restored." But even as he spoke, the air quivered. The light dimmed slightly, just enough for him to see, within the heart's glow, a faint shadow coiling once more. A whisper brushed his ear. "For now." He said nothing, only watched as the students looked around in awe. He smiled at them, kind and proud, but deep within he knew the truth. They had mended the bond, yes, but some things once awakened do not return easily to sleep. And far away in the dungeons where the stone was oldest, a crack appeared in the wall, thin as a hair, black as night. From within it something stirred. Night fell again over the castle, soft and veiled in mist, but it was not the peaceful quiet of a school at rest. The torches in the corridors guttered as though in fear. Portraits pretended to sleep. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Beneath the surface calm, the very stones of Hogwarts throbbed faintly, alive with the pulse of ancient magic, wary and waiting. Dumbledore stood by the window of his office, looking out over the moonlit lake. The reflection of the castle trembled upon the water, rippling as though disturbed by an unseen hand. He could not shake the thought that the reflection was truer than the image above, that beneath the beauty and light of Hogwarts lay something darker, coiling and patient. Behind him, the phoenix fox gave a low, uneasy trill. Dumbledore turned, and his eyes softened. "You feel it too, my friend." The phoenix rustled his feathers, then lifted his head to the ceiling and released a single note, a clear, piercing tone that shimmered with warmth. For a moment the air lightened, the shadows retreating from the corners. Dumbledore smiled faintly. Even the darkest magic hesitates before true light. But when the sound faded, the weight returned, heavier than before. He moved to his desk, where the ancient book from the vault still lay open. Its blank pages had begun to stir again with faint glimmers of gold. New words were forming, slow and deliberate. The bond restored, the gate renewed, yet what was sealed calls still. The four must stand once more where the heart was bound, lest the shadow take flesh. He read the words twice, then whispered, "Take flesh." Before dawn, he sent for the four students once again. They gathered in the courtyard as the first light touched the towers, Godfrey, Helena, Edmund, and Eveline, weary but unbroken. "You told us we succeeded," said Godfrey, confusion creasing his brow. "That the unity was restored." "It was," Dumbledore said, "but the castle is old, and so are the bindings that hold it safe. The magic stirs again. The shadow seeks a vessel, a form through which it may return." Eveline spoke softly. "A vessel? You mean a person?" He nodded gravely. Or perhaps something worse. Magic without shape seeks one to inhabit. The words hung in the cold morning air. Then we must seal it properly, Edmund said firmly. Tell us what to do. He hesitated. The Founder's enchantments were designed to preserve balance. To renew them again risks great danger. I will not force you. But Helena lifted her chin. You don't have to, Professor. Hogwarts has given us everything. We won't see it fall. Dumbledore's gaze warmed. Then we begin tonight. The day passed in strange quiet. The students went about their lessons, unaware of what brewed beneath their feet, though a sense of unease seemed to ripple through the air. The ghost moved quickly through walls, murmuring to one another in tones too soft to catch, and far below in the depths near the dungeons, faint cracks spread through the stones, weeping cold mist. That evening, as the sun sank behind the mountains, Dumbledore and his 4 companions descended once more into the heart of the castle. The vault awaited them, vast and solemn, lit by the glow of the heart floating above the altar. The statues of the Founders loomed silently, their eyes gleaming faintly in the dim light. Dumbledore approached the altar, his wand raised. "We will not fight the shadow with power," he said softly, "but with the same truth that built this place. Remember that." They formed a circle beneath the heart, standing upon the ruins of their houses. Dumbledore began to chant the ancient words he had learned from the book, slow rhythmic syllables that resonated deep within the stone. At first, the chamber filled with gentle light, warm and steady. The heart brightened, spinning slowly above them. But then a tremor ran through the ground. The light flickered. Eveline gasped, "Professor, something's wrong." Dumbledore's chant faltered. From the cracks in the walls poured mist, dark and cold, swirling into shapes that writhed and twisted. The shadow was returning, stronger than before. "Stand fast," he shouted. "Hold the circle." The students locked hands, their faces pale in the flickering light. The mist coiled around them, whispering in their ears. Each heard something different. Godfrey heard laughter promising glory. Helena heard her mother's voice calling her home. Edmund heard the temptation of forbidden knowledge, and Eveline heard a whisper that spoke her name with terrible fondness. "Let go," it coaxed. "You are mine, child of Slytherin's line." Her grip faltered, but Dumbledore's voice broke through the haze. "Eveline, remember your courage." She clenched her hand tighter, her eyes blazing green. "I am not yours," she cried. A burst of light flared from the circle, forcing the mist back. But the shadow only screamed, its voice splitting the air. From its center, a form began to rise, half mist, half flesh, its outline shifting between man and serpent. The figure's eyes burned emerald. "You cannot bind me again," it hissed. "This castle was mine before it was yours." Dumbledore's face was set in grim resolve. "It was never yours alone, Salazar." He raised his wand, shouting, "Unum cor!" The heart blazed, sending a pillar of light down upon them. The students joined in, each speaking the word of their house: valor, fidelity, wisdom, ambition, their voices uniting in harmony. The light expanded, swallowing the mist, the shadow, the screams. The cavern shook, stones cracking, magic surging like a tide. The statues of the Founders glowed brighter and brighter until their features blurred into pure light. Then silence. When the light faded, the vault was calm once more. The heart floated above them, steady and clear. The shadow was gone. Dumbledore lowered his wand slowly, his breath coming shallow and quick. Around him the students stirred, dazed but alive. "Is it over?" Helena whispered. He looked up at the heart, its glow serene. "Yes," he said quietly. "For now, it sleeps again." As they turned to leave, Eveline paused beside the statue of Slytherin. For the first time, the founder's stone face seemed softer, almost sorrowful. She reached out and touched the edge of his robe. "Perhaps," she murmured, "you only wanted to protect what you loved." They climbed the stairs back toward the world of light. Behind them, the vault sealed itself, the runes dimming one by one. When they reached the upper halls, dawn was breaking. The sunlight poured through the windows, golden and clean, and the castle seemed to exhale, its magic calm once more. Dumbledore dismissed them to rest, but he remained a while longer in the courtyard, watching the morning unfold. The banners hung still, the air was warm, yet in the reflection of the great hall's windows, he thought he saw a faint shimmer, an echo of green mist curling like smoke. He smiled sadly. "Nothing ends forever," he murmured, "but so long as there are those who stand together, darkness will never truly win." Fawkes sang then high and clear, and the sound rose through the towers of Hogwarts, like sunlight breaking through shadow, carrying hope into every hidden corner of the castle's heart. The days that followed the sealing of the vault were bright and filled with a strange, fragile peace. The sky above Hogwarts shone clear and blue, and for the first time in many weeks, laughter returned to the halls. Lessons resumed, the portraits gossiped freely once more, and the ghosts drifted about with relief instead of unease. The great castle seemed to breathe again, as though awakening from a nightmare, yet Dumbledore could not rest. Though the heart had been calmed, he felt the pulse of its magic even from afar, a heartbeat beneath his feet, slow and deep, like the steady drum of something alive beneath the stone. It was not evil, not yet, but it was restless. He knew too well the power so ancient did not fade. It only slept, waiting for time to weaken its bonds again. He spent the nights walking the empty corridors, wand light glimmering off the suits of armor and stone floors. Once or twice, he thought he heard footsteps behind him, but when he turned, no one was there. The silence of the castle was vast, and even he, who loved it as deeply as any man could love a place, felt for the first time its weight. At dawn, he often found himself drawn to the astronomy tower where he watched the sun rise above the forbidden forest. Each morning, the golden light spilled across the lake, and the reflection of Hogwarts burned like fire upon the water. Fawkes always joined him there, his wings folded neatly, his golden eyes full of wisdom that no words could hold. "You saw it too, didn't you?" Dumbledore murmured one morning as the wind tugged gently at his robes. The shadow fought not only for power, but for place, for remembrance. Perhaps even the darkest souls fear being forgotten. The phoenix trilled softly, and Dumbledore smiled faintly. "Aye, perhaps you're right. Some memories are best left to fade." He turned to leave, but a flicker of movement below caught his eye. 4 students were crossing the courtyard, the same 4 who had stood with him in the vault. He had dismissed them to their lives, believing their part in this strange tale was done. Yet seeing them together again stirred something in him. There was a bond between them now, invisible but strong, forged in fire and fear and faith. Godfrey Thorne walked at their head, proud and bright-eyed as ever, his laughter echoing. Beside him, Helena March carried a stack of books, shaking her head at his jesting. Edmund Quill, serious and sharp, was already scribbling notes as he walked, and Eveline Rosier, quiet and watchful, glanced up at the towers with something between longing and caution in her gaze. Dumbledore descended the stairs and met them at the entrance. "A rare gathering," he said, smiling. "Are you conspiring again? Or merely keeping one another out of mischief?" Godfrey grinned. "A bit of both, sir." Helena spoke next, more hesitantly. "Professor, we've been having dreams, all of us, about the vault." Dumbledore's smile faded. "Dreams?" Edmund nodded. "We see the heart. It's brighter, somehow, but there's a voice, too. It calls to us. Not like before, not dark, but like it wants something." Eveline's voice was barely a whisper. "It says, 'Come home.'" The courtyard fell silent. Dumbledore regarded them carefully. He could sense no deception, only confusion and truth. "Magic of such age is never silent," he said at last. "The vault and the heart are bound to you now. You each carry part of its power, tiny, harmless fragments perhaps, but enough to keep you tied to it. Dreams are its way of remembering you." Helena frowned. "Remembering us?" "Yes. When you stood before it, you renewed the unity that built this castle. The heart knows you as the four who restored its balance." Godfrey looked uneasy. "And if that balance breaks again, then it will call once more," Dumbledore said softly. "But not yet." He dismissed them with a kind word, yet the unease lingered in his heart. Dreams were no idle matter when tied to ancient enchantments. He resolved to keep watch more closely than ever before. That night the wind rose again, howling through the spires. Dumbledore was in his study when Fawkes suddenly cried out, a harsh, startled sound, unlike any song the Phoenix had ever sung. The candle flames guttered. A chill swept the room. "What is it?" Dumbledore murmured, standing quickly. The Phoenix spread his wings and pointed his golden beak toward the window. Outside, a green glow shimmered faintly above the lake, pulsing like a heartbeat. It was not the gentle hue of the heart, but a reflection, something echoing it from afar. Dumbledore's wand was in his hand before thought could follow. He hurried through the halls, robes billowing, down the stairs and out into the courtyard. The night air was cold and sharp, heavy with the scent of rain. Across the grounds, he saw it clearly now. The light beneath the surface of the lake, swirling and alive, casting ripples that shimmered with emerald fire. "By the Founders," he whispered. He moved to the water's edge and raised his wand. "Lumos Maxima." The light from his spell cut through the darkness, revealing shapes below the surface, runes glowing faintly in a circle, the same design that marked the vault. Something was stirring beneath them, drawing on the echo of the heart's magic. He felt it then, the shadow's faint, lingering pulse. It was not alive in the way it had been, not conscious, but its essence had not fully faded. Some fragment had escaped the vault during the final battle, drifting like smoke through the cracks of the ancient stone, and now the lake, ever ancient, ever mysterious, was holding it, feeding it. The next morning he called the 4 students again. They listened in stunned silence as he explained what he had seen. "The lake was there before the castle," Dumbledore said, pacing slowly before them. "It is older than the Founder's enchantments, and deeper than any map records. It has absorbed 1,000 years of magic, Spells cast, secrets whispered, memories forgotten. If even a trace of the shadow touched its waters. Edmund finished the thought quietly. It could grow. Yes, Dumbledore said, slowly, perhaps over years. But if it feeds on the heart's light, it will awaken again. We cannot let that happen. Godfrey clenched his fists. Then we stop it. Tell us how. Dumbledore hesitated, then sighed. There may be only one way. To seal the lake itself with the same unity that restored the vault. A ritual of balance performed together. Helena's brow furrowed. And if it fails? Then the lake will not rest, he said gravely, and its waters may rise to claim what lies above. That night they gathered once more beneath the moon, standing at the edge of the black water. Dumbledore guided them to form a circle, their wands raised. The reflection of the stars shimmered upon the surface, mingling with faint green light from below. Speak not the names of power, he told them softly. Only the truth of what you are. The castle will listen. They began together, 4 voices, steady and sure, carrying across the still lake. We are courage that dares. We are loyalty that endures. We are wisdom that seeks. We are cunning that learns. As they spoke, light gathered at their feet. Red, yellow, blue, and green, twining upward like vines of flame. The glow reached the surface of the lake, spreading outward in ripples of gold. Beneath the water, the faint shadow writhed once, then stilled. The green light dimmed, replaced by soft silver. When the last echo of their words faded, the lake was calm. Dumbledore lowered his wand and looked upon them. Pride and sorrow mingled in his eyes. Hogwarts will remember you, he said quietly. The castle itself owes you a debt it can never repay. They smiled faintly, weary but unafraid. The water lapped gently at the shore, peaceful once more. Yet far below, deep in the unseen hollows of the lake bed, something small and dark coiled upon itself, a spark of memory, a remnant of will. It did not stir, it only waited. And as dawn broke, Dumbledore felt the faintest tremor beneath his boots, a heartbeat slow and patient, echoing from the depths. Autumn came upon Hogwarts in a sweep of gold and russet, the forests burning with color and the lake lying calm as polished glass. To most, the passing of summer brought peace. The harvest moon shone warm through the castle's high windows, and the smell of feasts and fallen leaves filled the great hall. Students laughed again, books and brooms in hand, and the castle, mysterious, ever-living, seemed to rest. But Dumbledore could not be still. The calm was too deep, too perfect, and in every silence he heard an echo, the slow, rhythmic pulse of the magic that bound the school together. It had grown quieter since the sealing of the lake, but it had not ceased. It was the sound of a slumbering beast, breathing beneath stone and water. One evening, when the last light faded from the towers, Dumbledore sat alone before the fire in his office. The flames threw long shadows across the floor, and Fawkes dozed upon his perch, his head tucked beneath a wing. The old book from the vault lay open on the desk before him. He had read it 100 times, and still new words appeared across its pages, as though the ink were alive. Tonight, a new line shimmered faintly upon the parchment. The bond endures through 4, yet one must guard the rest. When light divides again, the keeper shall rise. He frowned. Keeper, he murmured aloud. The flames flickered, and for a moment they shifted, taking the shape of a serpent coiling upward, its eyes burning green. He blinked, and the fire was only fire again. He rose and paced, his long robes whispering against the floor. The keeper shall rise. A prophecy, perhaps, or a warning? He thought of the 4 students, how they had been drawn to the vault, chosen by the castle itself. Could one of them be this keeper? The thought unsettled him more than he cared to admit, for though he trusted their hearts, he also knew that power, even when given with purpose, had its own will. Before dawn, he climbed the spiraling staircase to the North Tower. From there, he could see the breadth of the grounds, the forest, the shimmering lake, the faint silver mist curling from the hills. All was still. Yet as he watched, he thought he saw movement beneath the lake's surface, faint ripples spreading outward from the center, like the slow beat of a pulse. He turned away. Some things, he told himself, must be left to time, but time has never been patient with secrets. The dreams returned first. Helena March was the first to speak of them. She came to Dumbledore's office one cold morning, pale and shaken. "It's the heart," she said softly. "I see it every night, bright as the sun, but there's something inside it, a figure. I can't see the face, but it's watching me." Edmund soon reported the same, though in his dream the figure whispered words he could not understand. Godfrey confessed to feeling its call too, though he laughed it off, trying to hide the fear in his eyes. Eveline said nothing for several days, but when she finally came, her face was drawn and her hands trembled. "It's calling me by name," she said. Dumbledore felt the chill deepen within him. "And what does it say?" She hesitated. "It says, 'You are the key.'" That night, Dumbledore could not sleep. He sat in the library long after midnight, the glow of candlelight glimmering across the pages of open tomes. Old records of the founders lay before him, and among them a single scrap of parchment he had once dismissed as myth. Now he read it with new eyes. The keeper's blood must guard the seal, for from Slytherin's line shall come both peril and protection, one to awaken, one to bind. He leaned back slowly, the words echoing through him. Eveline Rosier descended, though distantly, from Salazar's own kin. It could not be chance that the castle had chosen her. The next day he found her by the lake, standing motionless at the water's edge. The wind lifted her hair, and the surface of the lake shimmered green and silver beneath the low autumn sun. "You felt it again," he said quietly. She nodded without turning. "It isn't calling me anymore, it's waiting." "For what?" "For me to answer." He stepped beside her, the hem of his robe brushing the reeds. "Eveline, what the heart desires is not always what is good. It is ancient, older than this school, older than our kind's understanding. It does not love, it remembers." "I know," she said. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were distant, reflecting the shifting light. "And yet it chose me, perhaps to undo what he began, or perhaps to finish it." He laid a hand on her shoulder. "If it calls again, you must come to me first. Do you understand?" "Yes, Professor." But her gaze did not leave the lake. That evening, Dumbledore convened the other 3. They gathered in his office as the wind rattled the windows. He told them what he feared, that the seal upon the lake was failing, and that Eveline's blood might hold the key to strengthening it. Godfrey slammed his hand on the desk. "Then we'll help her, whatever it takes." "She may not need help," Edmund said quietly. "She may be the one who must act." Helena shook her head fiercely. "We can't let her face it alone." Dumbledore looked from one to the other, pride and worry warring within him. "You may be right, but if the heart has chosen its keeper, it It will draw her, whether we will it or not. You must stand ready. 2 nights later, the storm returned. It came from nowhere, sudden and wild. Thunder rolled through the mountains, and lightning tore the sky above the castle. Rain lashed the windows, and the lake churned with fury, glowing faintly from within. The green light had returned, brighter than ever before. Dumbledore felt it before he saw it, the tremor beneath the ground, the surge of power rising from below. He seized his wand and ran. The halls flashed with light as the storm's fury echoed through every corridor. The portraits shouted warnings, and the ghosts fled before him. When he reached the courtyard, he saw them, 4 figures standing at the lake's edge, their robes whipped by the wind. Eveline stood at the center, wand raised, the emerald glow of the lake reflected in her eyes. "Eveline!" he shouted over the storm. "Step back!" She turned, her expression serene and strange. "It's opening, Professor. I can feel it." Behind her, the water erupted in a pillar of green fire. The surface split apart, revealing the faint outline of a doorway beneath the waves. The others tried to pull her back, but the wind howled, and a force unseen drove them away. Eveline took 1 step forward, and the storm froze. In that single breath of silence, she looked back at Dumbledore, her eyes clear and steady. "Tell them I understand now," she said softly. "He was never the enemy. He was trying to protect it from itself." Then the light consumed her. The water closed, the lake went still, and the night fell silent save for the whisper of rain. Dumbledore stood unmoving for a long time, his wand trembling in his hand. When at last the others reached him, the lake showed no trace of what had passed. Only the faintest shimmer remained upon the surface, green fading to silver, then gone. He whispered her name once, and it vanished into the wind. The next morning the storm had cleared, the air was clean and cold, and the castle stood untouched. But the bond that Dumbledore felt between Hogwarts and its heart was stronger now, steady, whole. The keeper, it seemed, had risen indeed, and deep beneath the water, unseen by any eye, the runes upon the hidden gate glowed faintly with emerald light, no longer restless, but at peace. The morning after the storm dawned quiet, too quiet for comfort. The grounds of Hogwarts lay washed and glistening under a pale, uncertain sun, the lake smooth as polished obsidian. Not a ripple marked its surface, not a bird stirred above the forest. To the students who woke that morning, it was as if the night's chaos had been nothing but a dream. Yet for those who knew, for those who had seen the emerald blaze upon the water, the silence felt like the pause of held breath. Dumbledore stood alone upon the shore. His robes, still damp with rain, clung to him, and his eyes, sharp, searching, bright as ever, were fixed upon the lake. He could see his reflection upon its glassy surface, a tall figure crowned by the silver of morning, but older now, wearier. Behind that reflection, deeper within the water, faint glimmers of green moved like sleeping fireflies. He whispered, "Eveline." No answer came. The world was still. McGonagall approached quietly, her boots sinking into the damp earth. She carried no umbrella, though the grass still wept from the storm. "They say the lake is calm again," she said softly. "Whatever was rising has gone back to sleep." He did not look away from the water. "Yes," she succeeded. She hesitated. "The students, the others, they must not know what truly happened," he said. "Let them remember her as a girl lost to the storm. The truth is not for this age." McGonagall bowed her head. And the vault? Silent, Dumbledore replied. The heart no longer trembles. For the first time in months, Hogwarts feels still. He turned at last, and his expression softened. But stillness can be dangerous too. Magic is never meant to sleep forever. She said nothing, only watched him, understanding the weight behind his calm. Together they returned to the castle, its great doors yawning wide to welcome them. Inside, the day passed as if the storm had been a mere inconvenience. The great hall buzzed with laughter, breakfast clatter, echoing under enchanted ceilings now bright with soft autumn skies. Yet at the Slytherin table there was one empty seat. The house banner hung perfectly still, the serpent emblazoned upon it seeming to sleep. Godfrey, Helena, and Edmund sat together in silence. They ate little, speaking less. Every so often one of them would glance toward the lake through the tall windows, as if hoping to see a familiar shape rise from its depths. "She's not gone," Helena whispered finally. "I can feel her." Godfrey nodded slowly. "So can I. When I touched my wand this morning, it hummed, the same sound we heard in the vault." Edmund frowned. "It's the heart. It knows us still. We're tied to it and to her." Dumbledore, seated at the staff table, heard them, though they spoke quietly. His heart ached with pride and sorrow. They were brave, these children, bound by something far greater than they understood. When breakfast ended, he rose and crossed the hall to them. "Walk with me," he said gently. They followed him through the corridors, where light pooled golden upon the stones. When they reached the courtyard, he turned to face them. "You have all done what even the wisest of wizards could not. You stood where the founders themselves once stood, and you did not falter. Hogwarts owes you more than it can ever repay." Godfrey shifted uneasily. "We didn't save her." Dumbledore's voice softened. "She was not meant to be saved, Godfrey. She was meant to save us." He looked to the lake, then back to them. Eveline Rosier was chosen by something older than all of us. She gave herself freely, and in doing so became what the prophecy called the Keeper. The heart needed a guardian, a will to temper its strength. She is that will now. The castle breathes with her spirit. Helena's eyes glistened. "Then she's alive?" "In a way," Dumbledore said. "Not as we know life, but her presence lingers wherever magic runs deepest." The three students fell silent. They knew not what to say, nor how to grieve someone who had become something more than human. That night, Dumbledore returned to the vault for the last time. He descended alone, carrying only his wand and the faint, solemn song of Fawkes following him down the stone stair. The walls shimmered faintly as he passed, runes glowing in recognition of the wizard who had stood there before. When he entered the great chamber, he found it utterly changed. The statues of the founders no longer loomed with stern grandeur, but seemed almost alive, their stone softened by light. Above the altar floated the heart, steady and pure, its glow no longer golden but tinged with green. Within it shimmered the faint outline of a woman's face, young, serene, and utterly still. "Eveline," he whispered. The light pulsed once in reply, gentle as a breath. He felt no fear, no sorrow, only awe. "You understand now," he said. "You've become what Slytherin once sought and could not achieve, a protector bound not by ambition but by love." The chamber trembled faintly at his words, as though the castle itself sighed in agreement. He raised his wand and traced a circle in the air. "Rest, keeper of the heart. Guard well the home you saved." The light flared, then dimmed to a steady glow. The runes along the walls faded one by one until only a single phrase remained, etched in pale green flame above the altar. 4 became 1, and 1 became all. Dumbledore turned away, the hem of his robes whispering softly against the stone as he climbed back toward the world of day. The hum of the castle followed him, a low living rhythm, peaceful now. Years would pass, and with them new generations of students would fill the halls of Hogwarts. None would know of the shadow that had once risen beneath their feet, nor of the girl who had given herself to guard them. Yet on certain nights, when the moon hung low and the lake glimmered with green light, the ghosts would whisper of her, of the keeper whose spirit watched from below, ensuring that no darkness would ever again claim the school she loved. And Dumbledore, older now, silver-haired and wise beyond measure, would sometimes walk the shore alone, pausing where the water met the reeds. There he would look upon his reflection and see, beneath the rippling surface, a faint glimmer of green. He would smile, faint and knowing. "Good evening, Eveline," he would murmur. "Hogwarts is safe." The wind would stir, carrying the scent of the forest and the whisper of unseen voices, soft, contented, eternal. The stars would shine upon the towers, upon the great hall, upon the place where courage, loyalty, wisdom, and cunning had once met and become one, and somewhere deep below, far beneath stone and time, the heart would pulse, steady, bright, eternal, its guardian watching, its magic unbroken, its unity complete. Winter crept upon Hogwarts in a hush of snow and silver, wrapping the towers in frost and veiling the forbidden forest in mist. The lake lay frozen, a perfect mirror for the pale sky, though now and then faint green light flickered beneath the ice, so brief and soft that those who saw it believed it only the play of dawn. The students spoke of it in whispers, calling it the Keeper's Glow, but few knew what those words truly meant. Years had passed since that stormed night when Eveline Rosier vanished into the lake's depths. The castle had flourished under Dumbledore's watch, the old shadows forgotten, the halls once more filled with laughter and the music of learning. Yet every so often, when the torches guttered and the wind moaned through the stone arches, a hum could be heard deep within the walls, the pulse of the heart, steady and serene. Dumbledore alone felt the truth of it. He could sense the castle's rhythm, the balance Eveline had restored, and though the memory of her sacrifice still weighed upon him, he took comfort in knowing she had not been lost. She was within Hogwarts now, part of its breath and heartbeat, the unseen guardian of its unity. One quiet evening, long after the last student had gone to bed, he climbed the marble staircase that wound to the top of the astronomy tower. The night air was sharp, and the stars blazed fiercely above. Fawkes followed him, a living flame against the cold, perching upon the stone rail. Dumbledore looked out across the grounds. Snow covered the lawns, and the forest beyond shimmered faintly in moonlight. The frozen lake stretched below like a sheet of glass, unbroken save for a faint circle at its center, where the ice never quite held. There the water gleamed pale green, as if alive. He smiled faintly. "You still watch over us, then?" The phoenix trilled softly, its song gentle as candlelight. It filled the air with warmth and the faint scent of spices and smoke. Dumbledore listened for a while, his mind drifting back to that time of turmoil. The shifting walls, the whispering chambers, the shadow that had nearly torn the school apart. He He remembered the courage of those 4 young students, their faith and fearlessness when the very stones beneath their feet had turned against them. And he remembered Eveline's eyes, calm even as the storm swallowed her. "You were braver than I," he murmured to the night. "You gave everything, and you never asked why." As he spoke, a shimmer passed across the lake, a ripple of green light spreading outward, faint but unmistakable. It lasted only a heartbeat, but Dumbledore saw it clearly. He laughed softly, almost in relief. "Ah, so you do still listen." He turned back toward the stair, but as he did, the wind carried something, a whisper so faint that it might have been only memory. "Always." He paused, eyes bright. The word faded, but warmth lingered. Fawkes gave a low cry, wings flaring, and for a moment the phoenix's feathers burned gold and emerald. Then all was still again. The following day, life at Hogwarts went on as always. Snowball fights erupted on the lawns. Laughter echoed down the corridors. The great hall glittered with garlands and enchanted candles. To the students, the castle was eternal and untroubled, a sanctuary untouched by time. They did not see the quiet glances Dumbledore cast toward the lake each morning, nor the faint smile that curved his lips when the light shimmered upon its surface, but the portraits saw, the ghosts whispered, and the magic of the castle, ancient, aware, seemed gentler now, less wild than before. The staircases no longer misbehaved as often, and the very air of the halls felt lighter, as if the stones themselves were at peace. One evening, Professor McGonagall found Dumbledore seated in the courtyard, the snow thick about his boots, a parchment spread upon his knee. He was sketching, his wand tip trailing lines of silver ink that formed the image of 4 figures standing before the lake, a lion, a badger, a raven, and a serpent entwined above them. "That's beautiful," she said quietly. He looked up and smiled. "A reminder," he said, "so that we do not forget what unity costs and what it gives." She nodded, her expression softening. "The students speak of her sometimes, you know. The keeper. They say if one stands by the lake on a still night, one can hear a woman singing." "Perhaps they can," Dumbledore said. "Or perhaps Hogwarts remembers in its own way." When she left, he lingered. The snow fell softly, covering the parchment until only a faint shimmer of ink remained. He rose, brushed the snow from his robes, and turned toward the castle. As he entered the great hall, the sight that met him filled him with quiet pride. The 4 house tables gleamed beneath the floating candles, and above them the banners of Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw, and Slytherin hung side by side in perfect harmony. The colors wove together in the air, red and gold, yellow and black, blue and bronze, green and silver, intertwining like living threads of light. He looked upon them for a long moment, then whispered, "The unity of 4. A faint warmth stirred through the hall, subtle and comforting, like the touch of an unseen hand. The candles flickered brighter. Somewhere above, faint music echoed, a melody that no living voice sang. The years would roll on. Generations would come and go, and the legend of Dumbledore and the secret magic of the founders would fade into whispered tales told in the dormitories at midnight. Few would believe them, and fewer still would know the truth. But on nights when the moon was high and the lake glowed faintly green, a quiet voice would seem to hum in the air, gentle as a lullaby. It was said that when the headmaster walked the halls in those later years, the castle itself seemed to listen. Doors opened softly before him, staircases paused mid-turn as if to wait for his passing, and portraits smiled as though greeting an old friend. For Hogwarts had not forgotten its savior, nor the keeper beneath the lake, nor the unity that bound them all, and so it endured, stone and spirit, courage and cunning, heart and wisdom woven together into one living spell. The legacy of the four lived on in every corridor, every classroom, every candle's glow. On the coldest winter nights, when even the stars seemed far away, Dumbledore would return once more to the tower and watch the lake. There, at the heart of the frozen water, he would see a faint pulse of light, steady, enduring, alive. He would close his eyes and whisper, "Sleep well, keeper. Your work is done." And beneath the ice, the light would answer with a slow, gentle beat. Hogwarts' heart, unbroken, forever guarded by the girl who became its soul. The snow would fall, the seasons would turn, and though the world outside changed, the magic of the founders endured. Their unity, born of hope and sacrifice, became the very breath of the castle, a promise that no darkness could break. And so, the legend of Dumbledore and the secret magic of the founders was written, not in books, but in the living stone of Hogwarts itself. Its echo would remain for centuries, whispered in the hum of the walls, in the flicker of the torches, in the song of the lake at midnight. For as long as Hogwarts stood, so too would the bond they had restored. 4 hearts, 1 soul, bound by love and light eternal.